Hey, all, and welcome to this week's episode of the Shut Up, Get Up podcast. I'm your host, Mike Muldoon, and today I want to talk about this really interesting quote that's been going around, and it really resonates, especially if you're a parent. So many times we, as parents, we'd always say, I would die for my kids. I would jump in front of that car. I'd jump in front of that bullet. I would jump in front of that train. I would do whatever. And it's great, and it's noble, and it's heroic. But I think realistically, and what this quote really pointed out, what we really need to start focusing more on is what our kids really want. And that's for us to live for them. When my first was born, she's 8 years old now, which is crazy how much time flies. But when my first was born, I actually started just writing some funny little things because a buddy of mine was about to have a kid. And I thought, it'd be really funny to just put together a couple little notes for him to look forward to. It's my buddy Christian at the time, and his daughter was going to be born a few months later. And I figured if I got like 8 to 10 funny things, because him and I always used to joke around about a lot of things, I thought he'd get a kick out of it. But I started writing more and more of these things, and eventually I came up with 101 of them. And this book I ended up publishing was called 101 Things First Time Dads Need to Know About Baby and all the crap that comes with them. It's a joke book. For the most part, it was a joke. It's meant for toilet bowl reading, just kind of sitting there, just give you something to do, flip through it. You'll learn a couple of things, but realistically, if you're panicked about being a parent, I wouldn't rush out to buy it because it's not going to teach you that much. It was just meant to be a joke book. But there are a couple of things in it that I think really do hold true. And two of the things that really always stuck with me that I wrote in that book and I think are really important for first-time parents is basically, one, short of you being a terrible human being who's not going to love, feed, clothe, or take care of that child, just politely tell everybody to shut the up in terms of how you should parent your kids. Because everybody will tell you what you should do with your kids. Everybody should have an opinion about how you're going to raise your kids. You know what? You'll figure out how you're going to raise your kids best. Just love them and you're going to figure it out. All right. But my second one that's really, really, really resonates is that the day you have a child, you've signed up for a perpetual case of lifelong worry. And everything changes. Everything changes. You start worrying about them all the time. And, and you love them and you want to be there for them. And it's crazy. Being a parent is crazy. Your whole perspective on life, anything that you thought mattered prior to kids no longer matters once you have them. So good luck if you haven't had any yet. It's awesome. And for those who have them, well, I guess you can relate to a lot of this. But getting back to what I was saying, right? Again, we always want to be heroic, right? I would die for my kids. I would fight for my kids. I would do this for my kids. But realistically, the simplest thing for a lot of us to do and to take advantage of is to live for our kids. And I think there's so many different ways of doing that. And I think a lot of times, number one is just staying alive longer. It's easy to say, I would be heroic for my children. I would jump in front of that car for them. But, while simultaneously you're home drinking 10 beers at night or talking about I would, jump in front of that bullet for my kids, but simultaneously you're not taking care of your health. Your doctor's like, hey man, your cholesterol is really, really high, but you're leaving the office, you're pounding donuts, you're eating, 4 hot dogs and a full pizza. Or maybe you're a 2-pack-a-day smoker. I would totally, jump in front of that train for my kid, but you know what? You're smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day. So there's a lot of things that we can do that we can be heroic for our children. And number one is to just try to stay around longer. I don't think our kids need us to be heroes as much as they just need us to be around. And and I think that's, something that maybe it could be a focal point to help with change, right? If you needed the motivation to change, to quit smoking, you needed that motivation to, quit drinking or excessive drinking, or you needed that motivation to stop any other bad habits you have. Well, here it is. Because if you're willing to die for your kids, then you got to be willing to live for your children. Because ultimately, that's what they really want, right? They want us to be around. They want us to be around long enough that they'll beg us and, for their first vehicle and put us through hell at times and, really challenge us and challenge our patience at times. But I think it's really important that if you needed motivation to do anything and you have children, you really have to think that the most heroic thing we can do for them is that we could live for them. Now, living doesn't necessarily always have to be, just about health, because some people might be healthy. You might be a non-smoker, a non-drinker, an ex or current marathon runner, triathlete runner, but maybe you're not living for them because you're just slowly killing yourself because you're just immersed in your job. You're not taking time for them. Obviously stress is a big component to health. Maybe you're thinking that you're living for them because you're trying to set them up for this amazing life. I do everything for them. I work so hard. I earn all this money. I do it for them. I do it for them so they don't have to worry. But ultimately, you're not really living for them. You're living for this idea of yourself or how you want to be remembered as this person who set their kids up. Look at me. I've given them all this stuff, which is amazing because every parent wants to be that person. But again, most of the time, all our children want is us. They want us to live for us now. And nothing's worse than, having all this time go by where we have, immersed ourselves into these worlds, we're doing it for our family, but time is going by and then that time doesn't come back. So living for them sometimes not just means your mortality, extending your mortality, but it also means just being with them, giving them your time. It's amazing. The one thing I always tried to do with my kids, and I'm not perfect. By the way, listen, it is so important to understand that if you're listening to me, I don't come from a point of perfection. There's a lot of things that I talk about, and there's a lot of things. It's because I've had to work on it myself, and I'm still continually having to work. I'm one of these people who has their phone in their hands as well. I'm one of these people who gets a little obsessive about things at times, like, no, hold on, I got to check out the score of the Jets game, or I got to read every article, even though I know what happened and I know the outcome and it made me miserable. I'm a Jets fan. Yes, I am. But I'm trying to work on it. But one thing I try to do with my kids is I try to let them see me see them. And one of the things I like to do is if they're at a playground, you should try this, right? If they're at a playground, they're doing something, watch them. Nothing is more magical for your child than to have them, they're running around, they're playing, they're always crazy, but they'll always take that moment to kind of stop and look over to see like, oh, okay, yeah, you're still there. Okay. And they're going to go back out and they're going to play and they're going to run around. And every once in a while they stop and they're going to look over there and be like, oh, yep, there you are, right? Because you're their home base, right? You're your kid's home base. And what I always try to do is let them catch me looking at them. So that when they look over, they don't see dad staring at his phone. They don't see dad looking up. They see dad watching them. And it's funny because if you do this, if you're a parent, you do this, it's kind of magical because you'll see them get all like embarrassed. Like they just go, oh, dad's been watching me the whole time. Oh my gosh, it's so cute. So that's another thing about, living for your children. It's not just your health and beating mortality, but giving them that time that you're not going to get back someday. We're not going to get it back. As my kids, they love their huddles. They don't love their huddles. I wish they loved their huddles. I hope my son, well, it'd be cool if he played football. I won't wish that upon him. I mean, if he doesn't want to play football, he doesn't want to play football. I mean, I love football, but he doesn't have to play football. But anyway, they love their cuddles. But I know it's only going to be a matter of time where I go to give them a hug and I'm like, ugh, Dad, you're smothering me. But at least I'll know I was in that time then I was living for them, right? So I was trying to give them that attention. I won't look back and go, gosh, I wish when she was 5 years old, I hugged him more. I wish when he was 4 years old, I told him I loved him more. Again, I'm not a perfect parent. I don't sit here in front of you and tell you I'm a perfect parent. I just try. I have my own challenges like everybody else, but I try. But I think it's so important that if we are so passionate and so willing to sit there and say, you know what, I would die for my children, then we need to be just as passionate and just as willing to say, I'm going to live for my kids. And if that means I've got to change some bad habits, or I've got to figure out a way to make more time for them, or I've got to figure out a way to just be there for them more, or I've got to set aside this sort of, maybe this little bit of this ego that you have of, I want to provide so my kids have the best of everything, and let everybody else see it. And maybe think, you know what, ultimately what it really comes down to is just living for them and giving them the thing that they're going to remember the most is being with you and how you made them feel in those times. All right. Because as any parent can attest, your kid will pound the floors for a new toy. I want this toy. I want this toy. I want this toy. I want this toy. And eventually, maybe you get them that toy. I love you. I love this toy. This toy's amazing. It's so great. And a couple of days later, you walk by and the toy's been completely discarded. Completely discarded. They're not even playing with it anymore. And you just look at it like, but you begged me for this toy. And then you realize you couldn't expect them to actually just hold on and play this toy for the rest of their lives, even though you wanted to. You spent a lot of money on it. But what I'm saying is that your kids, they'll remember moments with you more than they're going to remember that toy. Still to this day, my kids, and again, they're still very young, will talk about things that we did, going to the movies this one time, or we're in London going to see this house, or when we were living overseas, traveling a little bit, or going up to Dales, or going into the Lake District when we're over in England, or, just doing random stuff. They remember the memories more so than they'll ever remember the toys or the gifts. So again, I thought that quote was really powerful because as any parent, your kids, they are, they're the things that can rise passion in you more than anything, and of course, including your significant other, your spouse as well. But what I'm saying is we always talk about like, oh, I would die for my kids. But I think it's really important to take a step back, really step back and see if we're actually living for them, because that's all they really want.
Shut up. Get up.